Welcome to another episode of Builders, Budgets, and Beers. I'm one of the co-hosts, Reece Barnes, and I'm going solo today. My trusty co-host Matt Calvano is out tending some serious business. But today we are joined with the lovely crew over at Hammett Homes out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And today we're going to be discussing the challenges of tracking cash flow in a construction company. This is going to be a really cool episode because we've actually got three individuals. We've got Holly, who is definitely comes with her expertise and background, but is serving more as like an admin, assisting, jack of all trades individual in the flow of tracking bills, receipts, budgets, and draws. Then we've got Jill, who is got a really unique background of just knowing construction inside and out. She's in the field. She serves as a controller, more of like the true accounting individual. And then we've got Al, the owner of the company. And when we're talking about the challenges of tracking cash in a construction company, you're going to hear really deep insights in terms of what their process looks like, the importance of that process, what steps and what pieces they track and they metric off of and they report on, and what they do to ensure that they're running a healthy cash flowing business. So if you're a listener that's wanting just to hear the insight from a real construction company doing this, and you're wanting to take some tidbits away, this is the episode for you. Let's go ahead and jump in and get the Hammett Homes team rolling. Bang. We're live.
Live action.
We're on. We are on. Hammett Home teams. Super stoked. Is my audio's good? I've been getting heckled by my audio, but it sounds good. You guys sound good too. Love having the Hammett Homes team here.
That's the question. I don't know.
Do that again.
Like, do we look good? Is my hair good?
Clean, crisp, ready for the camera.
Beard,
Faces for podcasts. Unless our listeners are on Instagram, then they're going to have a lot more context here and how good looking we all are. No, guys, I'm super excited to have you on. Thank you for joining Builders, Budgets, and Beers. I'll just go ahead. I always like to kick these off and give the audience a little background on Hammett Homes. We've got three individuals for those that are listening on. We've got Al Hammett, Jill, and Holly. Jill, Holly, I should know your last names, but we'll just run with it. We'll go ahead and you guys give some intros. We'll start up and you guys do your thing.
I'll dive in. Al Hammett with Hammett Homes. I bench press 405 pounds for reps. I run a 4.640 and I'm a Libra. High disc profile. Oh, wrong podcast. Sorry.
Wait. I was going to say, how many people bench? Did you say 405?
405. Yeah.
Which we're in the same club together. So that's awesome. I didn't know we shared that.
I can see it from here. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. We call them delts in the lifting community. I've got roasts on my shoulders.
100%.
One day. How many 405 people in the 405 bench press club know their zodiac sign?
Three, obviously. Four.
That is a prerequisite to be gainfully employed here at Hammett Homes.
Knowing zodiac? I have no idea what my zodiac is, so let's just go ahead and get this ironed out. I was born on December 29th.
Hold please. Let's Google it.
Google it. And again, what does the zodiac mean? Like, what is it? It's like emotions or tendencies, or what is it?
I was gonna say.
Yeah, you're a Capricorn, and then it basically tells you like who you should be like married to, who you definitely shouldn't be married to, the reason why, like all of that good. I'm actually just pulling that out of my ass.
Is that like the water sign, fire sign, that kind of stuff?
Water sign, fire sign. See, this is all out of my realm. I mean, I'm just gonna stick to drinking beer, bench pressing, selling software, talking to contractors. We'll keep it there. Okay, so we've got Al 405, some type of zodiac symbol. Actually, and Al, we can talk about this a little bit here towards the end of the show. But I'm going to call them ultras, or no, Everesting.
Everesting, yeah, brother.
Okay, we'll talk about Everesting later. Jill, Holly, intros.
Oh man, Jill Gibson. Been in residential construction for a long time, 20 plus years. And do a little bit out in the field, a little bit in the office. So I wear many hats here, and part of that is accounting, bookkeeping, controller type vibes, as well as project management. So a little bit of everything.
Love it. Love it. That's going to work exceptionally well for the episode. And Holly, certainly last but certainly not least.
Holly Ryan, I have been with Hammond Homes for 3 years now. Before this, I worked in corporate America for over 17 years doing public relations. So a little bit of a change in career, field, everything. So it's been a good change.
Love it. Love it. Holly keeps people like Al and I out of the limelight.
Absolutely, unequivocally.
Full-time job.
I'm not going to, excuse me, I'm not going to say it is absolutely by design that her initials are HR, but it is absolutely by design that her initials are HR. So that's how that works. And I'm pulled in her office quite a bit. So
it's a calling. It's a calling. It was meant to be. It was meant to be. Okay, great. So we've got Al, Jill, Holly. Now, for the listeners here, I think the focus of this show, and really like what I wanted to tap into your guys' experience and perspectives on, is really diving deep into we'll go ahead and call it like the process, or I guess the exchange of information across a construction company when it comes to tracking, again, we'll just call it cash flow, right? Managing bills, managing receipts, keeping budgets up to date, invoicing, reporting, vendor compliance, just all the nuances. And the reason I wanted to focus on that with you guys is because I think the makeup of your company is very similar in terms of like staff size. But I think it would give a lot of perspective to the listeners in terms of how you guys operate. And we'll talk about this pre-adaptive to talk about what this looked like for you guys before. And just start to discuss some of the challenges, some of the experiences that you had in the processes. So
sure.
I think just adding some color here, we'll start with Al. I mean, as the business owner, when it comes to tracking project financials as a business, what do you see as being the most important component of having multiple individuals involved in these processes?
100%. Well, I mean, you said tracking a couple of times, brother. I mean, and candidly speaking, what I've learned and the hard way is you can't improve what you don't track. So if we're not quantifiably identifying where our metrics are, whether we're coming up short or not, how can we have an accurate assessment? And then to that point, obviously, the ladies next to me are, while I like to think I'm the head of the organization, they're certainly the next that control that. And I think that's like what, my Big Fat Greek Wedding or wherever I just stole that from. So having two sets of eyes, and they can certainly further speak to this better than I can, they meet on a weekly basis, if not more. So that cadence is constantly evolving to ensure that we're inspecting what we expect with deliverables. Certainly the accounting piece, the AI piece, which is something we should talk about with Adaptive because it's legit. It helps if there's something that I think or projecting that may go awry. I understand why and when almost real time. And then I have that feedback almost immediately from Holly and Jill as well. So it's definitely a value add to have multiple eyes on it at all times. And then the simplicity of it is if I'm traveling, builder 20 meetings, seminars, masterminds, what have you, I'm still in the know because it's real time. Phone, computer, iPad, what have you.
Totally. Well, and I think that's like just your perspective, Al, being, the owner of the business. I think that rings true. And I think that should be like a large focus of business owners, right? It's like obviously visibility. This is going to come down into reporting and obviously the autonomy with your team to be able to perform their function consistently and to a high level. But that always boils down into the trackability of it. So like, yes, the reporting, I always refer to reporting as the output, because that's what it is. But in order for that output to mean anything, right, you've got to have reasonable tracking, and not only reasonable tracking that makes sense for the business, but that has to be done consistently.
Sure.
Right. You've got to track it consistently. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be moving us to a vision that we're ultimately wanting to know more about. So with you being the business owner and obviously looking at like the high level, the output so that you can be, doing the many things that Al Hammond does. Jill, Holly, like, let's hear a little bit about the day to day again, like pre-adaptive, just so that like people can understand what these processes and flows look like with the volume of bills, the volume of invoices, the tracking, the organization, the communication. What does that actually look like for you guys?
Sure. We get, obviously, when we get invoices in, we're either getting them emailed to us or through, old snail mail. This still happens every so often.
Mhm.
So those come in. We, in the pre-adaptive days, would have to manually enter those into our computer management software, which would push through to QuickBooks. We also work hand in hand with that. That's where he pretty much would print all the checks, and just took a long time to get through everything, which was also frustrating and annoying. All the things last thing I want to be doing is taking a ton of time entering all the bills.
Totally.
Adaptive, I know that's where kind of Holly really jumped in and was able to help. One of the AI stuff that was available, I'd shuffle those invoices to her and directly into Adaptive, which we take full advantage of. Then her and I on a weekly basis will go through those, just cross-reference, make sure payable, person we're paying, dollar amount is good. And then from the field side, we reconcile, making sure like, yep, this is done and complete, bill to be paid.
Perfect. And guys, reminder, we don't need to make this an Adaptive commercial. But no, you're all good. You're all good. I'm giving you grief. But the point is what I want to dive into, and I think that's a very common flow. And we talk to a lot of builders over here. I have over my career, the team, obviously we're very like deep in this process. And we hear a lot of builders saying like, we've got this like very, like proprietary process, or like this process that we've built over 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and there's like, we've built it, we were good, we don't need anything else. My point with bringing that up is there's nothing wrong with the way that things get done. Right. What you had mentioned, Jill, right? Like at the end of the day, the work is getting done.
Yep.
But even just like more granularly, when we get the invoices that are snail mailed in and emailed to us and handed to us and texted to us, and then the mechanics and the motions that it has to go through, tying this back into Al's comment rather of trackability, what did that communication component look like when you guys were doing this manual and typing things into computers and organizing? What did that process look like?
A little similar, but yet not as efficient, I would say.
And I could probably speak to the efficiencies with that. So prior to using the system that we're using now, I am still and was a firm believer that every single check that was issued is signed by me. So I have a really good signature because I've signed 7 million checks. I'm being facetious, but I didn't want just a stamp for multiple reasons. Security, you hear check fraud, and there's positive pay systems and a litany of things that you can do on the back end. But I also wanted to make sure, when we haven't really talked about our business model, it's probably good for the listener to get into that for like 2 seconds on what we do.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're a fixed cost builder, truly custom homes. So we don't do any speculative builds. Everything is truly custom catered to the needs and wants of the clients. This is year 47 for us by the grace of God. So I am second gen, and we build 8 to 10 homes a year. We're based in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We go as far south as Indianapolis, and then up into the region area south of Chicago. But I say that to say, as a small family-owned business prior to scaling to where we're at now, it was and still is important to me to have a relationship with every single one of my subcontractors and trade partners. Part of that relationship initially starts as a transactional relationship because they're providing us a good and a service, and then in exchange we're issuing payment for that. From taking that relationship from transactional, and I don't want to sound really cliche, to transitional, is understanding the cadence in which we would pay. So most builders are every 30 days. If you get us an invoice by Wednesday, we're issuing every Friday. So going back to the efficiency standpoint, extremely inefficient for Jill, as she's taking snail mail and components of emails and this and that and trying to compartmentalize that, making sure that we can, again, go back through the tracking piece, and then making sure that I get eyes on that, and then being in a position locally where I literally sit down if it's 52 checks that we're printing this week, then I literally count out 52 checks, put them in the printer, and so forth and so on. Value add to that is you keep your thumb on the pulse at all times. You know exactly where you're at, where the checks are written, and things of that nature. Disadvantage to that is you literally have to be in. So if you're traveling, if you're vacation, if you're what have you, those checks don't get sent. And then it's another thing, another to-do list to be able to proactively reach out to your crews and say, hey, checks aren't going to be issued this week. They're going to be issued next week. Or if you need checks issued this week, it's got to be in by Tuesday instead of Wednesday so we can issue on Thursday instead of Friday. You can understand how that's just, it's not as efficient at all, not optimized at all. And that's something internally that we're constantly looking at. And again, it sounds really cliche. We can strive for the best result, best quality product, best relationship, so forth and so on. But if you really pedestal the process throughout that, by default, we will land where we want to be from a result-oriented objective.
Totally. Well, and I think that's when you talk about like the exchanging and the passing and the necessity of individuals to be in a certain situation, like whether it is adaptive or it's whatever product, there's certainly those benefits of it. But I think even just to bring this back into the communication side, I mean, what would it take for you, and this might be a different answer for you, Jill, just considering your background, right, being in the field, running controller stuff, more on the accounting side, like very much like a hybrid, what would it take for you to understand how to categorize a bill? Like you get an invoice and you look at it, what has to happen in order for you to know it's at the right job, it's getting categorized out appropriately, this thing's approved, it's ready to be paid, we're ready to go? What did that look like for you guys?
So we've got a cost coding system, I'm sure like every other builder out there. We've kind of revamped that too, as our projects have gotten a little more custom and even a little more detail oriented. We've detailed that down even further. So just to get a good idea kind of where we're at all times in that costing aspect. So because I'm in the field and have a very close relationship with the project managers on the daily, I know where each job is at all times. So I know I'm out there talking to the crews, answering their questions, also checking in with those project managers. So we really know at all times where the jobs are at. So I know when we're on to the next phase or when we have to bill for drywall's done, let's get that drywall draw invoice in. So we know, okay, yep, we can pay that labor bill because the work is done. So,
right.
So what I do, it's helps speed up that process tremendously because I don't have to go and check with anybody else. I know the answer.
Right. Well, and so was there a time before Jill, like before you had like just a total diamond that was like
that
understood that
Dude,
like
thanks for that. Great.
knows the field, right? Knows construction, knows categorizing, like knows accounting. Like, was there a time before Jill to where it's like we've got someone who might not know it, and like how do we communicate that back and forth? Go ahead, Ad or Al.
That's a really good question, man. So in the come up of my come up, candidly speaking, when I, so to speak, took over, I had been in or around residential construction since I was knee high to a duck. So I was that little kid on the job site pushing a broom, acting like I was doing something positive, just getting in somebody's way. And then throughout high school and undergrad, I was in the field. Outside of undergrad, once I got into grad programs and I started getting the real estate license and I became the broker for the company. So for probably 4 to 5 years, I was the builder, the broker, the interior designer. You absolutely don't want me to be your interior designer, things of that nature. But I had my pulse on essentially every aspect of the business to where as I was growing the business, I had a finite understanding. So there wasn't a Jill. There wasn't anybody that was in a controller status. It was literally Al, like most small business owners still do today, go through the pain and the hardships of like, literally, I have to put my ass in a chair and figure out what I'm going to do and have time to be able to reconcile this invoice and that invoice. And at the time, dude, this was pre-QuickBooks for me. I was handwriting checks.
Dang.
And that's about as fun as it sounds.
Yeah, it sounds brutal. But then what about for the guys that are like, yeah, I don't mind it. Like, yeah, I just sit down and I do it for a couple nights or a couple hours at nights, keep my books clean. Like, what's to say, like, what else would you rather be doing when you're a broker, a builder, an interior designer, trying to curate work? Like,
no, climbing mountains, no. I think to your point, and again, one of the things that we talk about in our organization, and something with me personally, is time optimization.
Mhm.
Jill's a great example of that. And I'm not going to sit here and toot her horn, but toot. We'll do that. Holly is as well. So we look at our players on the court, 1 through 5, with the exception of maybe the center position, because Jill's not over 6 foot, 7 foot tall. It's still
5'5", yeah.
doesn't mean she's not gangster in the paint. She can do what she's got to do. I can really put Jill on any proverbial position on the court. She can bring the ball up. She can shoot. She can do whatever. Project manager, controller, vice president of operations, client relations, so forth and so with me, what does that allocate me to do? How can I then continue to grow the business? And pre-Jill or pre-Holly or pre-Hammett Holmes teams, I didn't have that option. So to directly answer your question, some guys don't really want to scale or grow to that. And there's no need or want to be able to do that. But if you have vision to do that, you've got to take a look at highest and best usage of your time. And maybe in the beginning, physically writing a check is probably highest and best usage. So you have a finite understanding of exactly where you are financially. But once you continue to understand that, you get your systems and your metrics in place to where you're not living above your means or stealing from Peter to pay Paul or whatever that is, then you start to trust and you start to look for systems that can help you time collapse through that. And that's exactly what we've done. It's a good question, dude.
Love it. Well, and Holly, you've been kind of quiet over there. What was your involvement in this process? Or what is your involvement in this process? Tell the listeners a little bit how you get involved with PR background, HR, human resources, Holly. How does all that work together?
Yeah, so mainly when I was brought in, it was a lot of the public relations, new business acquisition, really honing in on processes and whatnot at Hammett Homes. There was definitely a need with Jill. Like Jill is obviously, as Al spoke to, like playing so many different positions on the field. So are there things that I could, help Jill with that would alleviate some of the time, some of the more bookwork type time that can really get her out in the field or, doing some of the other tasks of Hammett Homes. So I was in before we used Adaptive, it was pretty, I want to say archaic. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was tedious. It was very, very tedious of, filing, putting it in, writing everything where, we started using Adaptive and it was like the AI would scrub everything. I could get in there. I could have everything ready for Jill and I to look at. Usually it's every Tuesday. It's actually at this time. Usually we're doing it.
We're usually doing it at this time. Yep.
Okay. Well, the subs are going to have to wait for checks.
Have to wait.
Sorry, guys. No, so we would, we sit down now. So we're in such a great spot now. And then too, if we need to tag you in, when we're working on accounting, we can add a comment, hey, if we need a quick time response. Even with things as receipts used to be tedious trying to figure out, okay, was this a legit charge? What is there a cost or is there a job that we can put it towards? And that really, I think, helps make sense accounting wise, trying to see what really is that real cost of each job. So that is an easy way for me to get in there, really kind of get in the weeds. And then you and I sit down to make sure.
Yeah, there was even a time where we were not really, and this sounds kind of bad, but not putting those credit card charges to the correct job for a while. Well, that was before you knew about that. But
that's a one-time thing. I've never heard of that happening.
I know. So it's definitely gotten job cost a lot more accurate as of now. As even 3 years ago, we just weren't capable to. We just weren't in a position to do that. So that's we have gotten much better at job costing and allocating as much as we can to those jobs. So it's just more accurate representation.
Totally. And can you add any more color? I think, Holly, that was like a great point in terms of the tediousness. And I think tedious work is such an interesting component to work. I don't mean to get too like philosophical here, but it's true. Like you go through day to day, not really realizing how monotonous and how tedious certain things are. And you just kind of accept it as what it is. What was kind of the inflection point for you guys to be like, we've got to figure this out? Like we had Jill, and Jill knows all because of her repertoire of experience.
Yes.
Now we bring Holly in, who seemingly, correct me if I'm wrong, Holly, doesn't have a background in this, but Holly is an A player and she's stepping in where is needed. And what was kind of the breaking point? What was kind of the we've got to figure this out, or this is the side of the business, the tediousness that is going to take our focus to start looking at optimization?
I can speak to that.
I figured you could.
I mean, I'll take ownership of that. It was me, because I'm the bottleneck, because we can do all the due diligence on the front end. By we, I mean them, expecting what we expect in terms of making sure that the actual scope of work that's been conveyed and communicated is actually complete. And is it complete to our satisfaction? Is the job site clean? The litany of variables that we go through and check. But once that's done and the checks are in the queue to print, again, I got to be asked to chair 4 checks to be able to be printed. And then I have to spend another hour and a half of just, I mean,
is it seriously an hour? Like an hour and a half of just like John Hancock on check over and over?
Boom, boom. And I'm also a little bit of a perfectionist with my signature. So that's just good. I mean, I might have been practicing that for my autograph since I was in 4th grade. It's totally fine. Like, I had hoop dreams back then, but we're not there yet. So it's good.
There's time.
Right, dude.
I think it's still good.
Is it safe to say like probably one of your least favorite things to do is to sit down, to take the time?
Absolutely.
You got to slow down.
Yeah.
Take the time, print the checks, hope they don't mess up in the printer.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. The printer might get chucked at the wall or out the window.
Yeah.
Buy a new printer, and then I got the 52 checks in the printer that I just threw out. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, then we get to clean up the mess. It's fine.
I think, there's, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but putting everyone in a position, and it also comes down to trust, man. I mean, that's the other thing, Reece, like from a systematic approach, when you, I don't want to say remove yourself, but when you trust someone to be able to handle something that's important as your company finances, because again, like that's your company finances. Yes, that's their payroll, my payroll, how the wheels stay greased. But at the same time, I just shared, I'm second gen. A lot of the relationships that we have, man, are multi-decade relationships that have an expectation that we're not going to miss bills. We are a debt-free organization by the grace of God, and we plan to stay that way. So when crews or subcontractors, we work with them, there's no fear or doubt, well, am I going to get paid by Hammond Homes, or am I going to get paid by Hammond Homes on time? I don't want to be the guy that's bottlenecking that, because I'm looking to be able to take a vacation with my family, or I'm at a business meeting, or I'm at a mastermind where they've done their scope of work and scrubbed everything, but it's literally just waiting for me to issue payment.
Right. Do you think that's what drives builders, business owners to hang on to these more manual, tedious tasks? Is that fear of tarnishing a relationship that they focus so hard on building, and they know that the process works. They know that, like, if we do A plus B plus C plus D all the way to Z, then everyone's going to get paid no matter the brute force. Do you think that's like a big driver for individuals, or what's your take on that? Maintaining the relationship with subs.
I think wholeheartedly, because you it's the whole adage, you're only as good as your weakest link. Well, and I know that sounds cliche to say, but when builders are looking or sourcing the best possible subcontractors they can, we're not necessarily talking about the best possible cost. We're talking about the best possible quality there. Those subject matter experts have their scope of work dialed in and systemized as well. Mm-hmm. And from a cash flow perspective, especially if they're handling materials like a trim carpenter or a concrete guy, where it's just not just labor, it's labor and materials. The efficiency of ensuring their payment and doing that on time and doing it consistently builds that trust with them. So when you bring in another third party and they don't understand, my concrete guy likes to send his invoices on Tuesday mornings or whatever the case may be, whereas most people are sending on Monday or Wednesday, or whatever the small change is that's just specific to that person. You got to go through each one of those and say, hey, this is where this person likes to be checked. They like to come to the office to pick up the check. This person likes to mail the check. So there's layers within it as well that you have to have that. And then the other piece, man, especially as a small business owner, cash flow is king. If you don't have a finite understanding where you're at with your cash flow, you could be upside down tomorrow with a lot of money in your bank account and not even know that. and then trusting your team to be able to have that, that's another place. But I think if you establish an expectation on the front end and you continually openly communicate like they do with me and each other, that's the other thing. They're constantly working together on the back end to be able to put us in a position to where if we have questions, let's get these questions answered Monday or Tuesday, not Friday, where we're holding up payment to be able to justify things of that nature.
Right. Totally. Well, and I hear that, and I mean, even just I think that's the piece, going back to the tediousness, is it's tedious, but it just kind of swells and it grows with the nuance. Right. And then that's where it kind of gets out of control, and you get these people that are just like hyper protective of the process. Yeah. Super interesting. I think, like, primarily, before, what would you say is the biggest value of removing the tediousness of the communication? Obviously, and this might be a stupid question, but like, what would you say is like the most glaring impact that you guys have seen from removing the friction just by the simple tediousness, the visibility, whatever it might be? What is it? Keep doing the manual process, automate it, remove friction.
I feel like it's time. I mean, just the time that it has saved us. I mean, I think about when you would come to our team meetings, just like with the stacks of papers, and a lot of times that was the communication, where now, we have a platform where it's like a quick, easy message and everybody's working in the same interface where all the information is right there that needs to be spoken about. I think that has just, I mean, obviously accounting is going to take as long as accounting does, but I feel like we've really remove some of those obstacles that made it so difficult. And I think about even with checks, now we have ACH payments that we can issue. So it really gets rid of, not all of them. There's certain, business partners who do prefer that paper check, but even for you, just being able to go on to the platform, see, who is set up for ACH, who has a bill that we can pay by ACH.
Yeah, and I think it's again saved a few trees along the way and some headaches as well, right? So it's able to and for me, it's everything is in one spot. So if we need to look at credit cards, it's right here. If we need to look at bills, we're right here. If we've got this vendor who is missing, we also use this for vendors, again, try to consolidate everything with their W-9s, their certificate of insurance, kind of everything is in one spot. So for us right now, we were bouncing back and forth or keeping our own files on the computer, which not convenient for anybody. So just one spot to know where to look for those, find those, so we can get everybody paid on time. And that's been huge as well.
Devil's advocate. Why can't I do that with a file cabinet? Why can't I do that with a manila folder
and
the team meeting?
Yeah,
we did.
It'll take longer.
Okay.
I still have folders. I do still some, like, I like the paper for some things, but for this, again, for it's much more convenient for us when we're reviewing things with him, or there's an issue on an invoice to us to be able to electronically look at that for each other versus 100 emails going back and forth. Hey, just pull it up. We'll look at it all at the same time, real time. And it is much more convenient.
Well, the other piece to that, and again, going back to the trust owner, from a business owner's perspective, first of all, where am I going to store that file cabinet? Is it locked? Who has keys to that? How many sets of keys are to that? And eventually, how many file cabinets am I going to have after 47 years of business? If I want to have access to those on what did I compensate? Now, it's a little bit of a caveat for us because our business model is we don't duplicate or build the same house twice ever. Mm-hmm. And I say that to say, so I can't go back and say, hey, I built this house 3 years ago. This was the cost associated with the materials. But there are tells relative to the type of material, the quantity, certainly the scope of work, things of that nature, where you can see if someone's really price gouging you, things of that nature. So from a trust standpoint for those guys and again, I'm still that guy. And I was very much one of those guys coming up that I want to be able to make sure I have my thumb on the pulse. I only want certain eyes on certain things at certain times because I have to be able to trust that those people are understanding and facilitating of what we want to get done. The other piece I would think about it is, now, I mean, I literally, dude, just had this conversation in September in our Builder 20 group because it's 2 days of awesome meetings and you learn a lot from 20 builders across the nation. but it's asked to chair for 8 to 10 hours a day of absorbing information.
Yeah.
I can get so much done in front of my computer in 16 to 20 hours, including paying all those 52 bills, and I'm never signing anything. I'm just hitting send, send, send,
Mm-hmm.
going. That's another thing that allows us to continue to be streamlined, because now where we had to proactively reach out and say, hey, Al's out of town to be able to execute your check. It doesn't matter if I'm out of town. That meeting was in San Diego. I was in California while that happened.
Yeah, totally. No, I think, guys, I think there's a lot of perspective here. And I think this is more of like a story episode, right? Like kind of just a perspective, an episode for the listeners to hear. And again, this certainly isn't a commercial, and we might listen back to this and be like, holy shit, we just like pumped up Adaptive the whole time. But I think it's more for like the reality of it is it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong. It's just, could we be doing it better? And what are the overall benefits to doing this?
I do think Al and Holly were, I think, brought Adaptive to the table, and I at first was like, oh man, guys, like I was again, I had a system. Was it a little bit cumbersome? Yes. Was it time consuming? Yes, but I trusted it. I knew I was the one inputting the information. I knew I was getting the right job. I knew I was getting it right, coded correctly. And then we filed it from there. Great. But so I probably initially was like, oh man, what are we doing? Do we trust this information? So, but it has been proven, it's proven to for sure save a ton of time. And in fact, it's pretty great. So
love it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say, I don't want to sit here and one size fits all for everybody. Literally,
right.
as a truly custom home builder, I know that not to be true. So I know that reasons are a lifetime, right? People and things come into your life for a different reason, or a lifetime. Some people are within a different season, and just because it may not be conducive with somebody right now doesn't mean that it's like they're less than, or they're not as optimized, or they're not working as efficiently. To Jill's point, I was very comfortable with that, where we were before. It wasn't as efficient. I didn't love literally writing the checks and everything that I've semi-complained about during this conversation as well. Mm-hmm. But it has to be the right fit. You still have to be able to trust. And I know a lot of people will say, hey, I don't know, this is a computer thing. You got ACH and numbers and identity theft and all kinds of things. How many times have you had a check washed?
Yeah,
I've had several. So I know the situation on like, hey, if we're still dealing with checks, like we could go through that. So there's ebbs and flows, checks and balances on both ends. But my point in saying that, man, it's got to be the right fit at the right time. It doesn't mean anybody's less than or not as optimized.
Yeah, we started out as baby steps too. We started with just entering a few bills. Let's see how this goes. And then it kind of, once we got comfortable with that, we brought, okay, now let's get credit card. Now we'll give access to the employees to put their own credit cards and receipts in. So it's kind of, we didn't jump right in at full steam ahead for sure, but just because we were still had to gain that trust, right?
Totally.
And there's a few things that we have, asked, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And we're working on it. Not quite yet. We're ready to roll that out maybe next year or next quarter, whatever it might be. So I know sounds like Adaptive, again, we are plugging, but they are listening and taking those things into consideration. I know, and we've had a couple things where we've had to, chat with them online and got right through everything. So overall, I would say, again, we've took us a while to trust it, but we're there.
Totally. Well, and I think that's a good point to bring up, Jill. I mean, I think, with this, I guess we'll just go ahead and label this what it is, like a plug for Adaptive. But I think it's with like the intention of what we're doing is to streamline these processes, right? And I think the one piece here that I always find interesting, when we're talking to customers, talking to prospects, so much of selling software, like you could argue this to not even just software, but really what you're buying is, yes, maybe a piece of software, but it's a process enhancement, 100%. Right? like it's yes, a product, it is software, but it's ultimately impacting and streamlining a process, or at least it should be, right? And I think in terms of your comment, Jill, to like the product enhancements and what we're doing in that, it's always with the intention of streamlining this process, not derailing the process.
Yep.
Right. And it's taking what is the builder doing at large. We get invoices in. We need to know where those costs go. We need to make sure that people are paid on time. We need to make sure that we have the cash to pay them on time. Meanwhile, we are capturing our margin as we are running a business. And how do we condense all of that to make a clean pass through from sub to contractor to client bank, whatever it might be, and reduce that friction to offer a much cleaner experience for everyone involved, lower the stress of, are we cash flowing? Al, you brought this up earlier of like, you could have a ton of cash in the bank and you could be totally upside down. Like we have some of our partners have done case studies on that with some of their customers. And there was one individual, he was a builder and he was cash flush, thought he was good. And the guy was like $5 million under billed after they went like going through like some like insane accounting. It was like, and actually maybe 5 million, it might be, I'll pull up the case study. We can post it, but it's some insane number, right? Of like missed build costs because there's so much going through and coming through. So to round that out a little bit, it's always with the intention of streamlining these processes and getting you guys in, albeit it might be a little forward thinking. It might be a little disruptive. It might be, to your point, Al, technology, computer stuff,
Right.
but it's very applicable. It's very palatable for builders, all with the intention of streamlining cash flow. So
yes, super user friendly. Like I said, I would think anybody who's even not super comfortable on computers can use it. It makes sense. You can undo anything if you think you messed something up, or all the things. It's user friendly. Again, really happy when we finally made that jump, I guess. And I definitely don't want to look back and do what we were doing before.
Well, I felt too, a lot of us to be in it and looking at all the same things, commenting real quick, like that part really streamlined it instead of, having to wait for our Wednesday team meeting. Okay, we'll all be here. Let's have those conversations. Then it can be more in real time. Even so, us at the office, Al, shooting him a comment, he can comment back real quick. It's just the time savings of it has just been phenomenal.
Well, to that point, it affords. So I'm up at 4 and I'm in the gym by 5. Between 4 and 5, I'm sending a litany of emails. I'm getting them the stuff that they have given me from the night before, the day before, that is imperative to keep moving on. Those comments, to what Holly just mentioned, affords me the ability to go in, and if they've got a question, yes, pay this. No, that doesn't match. No, we added this change order and it wasn't accounting for it, or something of that nature, real time. Whereas I have to be in town. You have to be able to get me on the phone. We have to be in a meeting to be able to go through. And then I don't know about you guys, but I want to sit down with a stack of bills in front of my face and go through them like I want to punch in my stomach. Like I have 30 other things that I want to do. So, and again, we're not here to just plug, but I'm also real and raw. Like the cash flow piece that you've spoken to. I don't know any builder, myself included, and I'm sure there are some that are listening to this, hopefully, that haven't navigated that. But when you recognize, early on in my career, when I didn't have a Jill or a Holly to also, to the point we talked about earlier, multiple sets of eyes looking at our books and making sure that everything is copacetic, you think what you want. But you also have, I shared with you I was the builder. I shared with you I'm the designer. I was the real estate broker. How many spots, how many hats am I wearing? How many places am I being pulled to where I don't have anybody even fact checking this with me, or no system electronically to where, A, have I overpaid or am I underbilled now? And once you recognize you're in that situation, it's a feeling you don't forget, and you don't want to be in that situation. So you start looking for systemizations to be able to get you out of that without throwing everything or trust on old school out the window, because you still have to learn to be able to trust the systems.
Totally. No, guys, I think this was great. I think this, I hope this was helpful to the listeners. We'll go ahead and cap it there. And for those that want to stay along, Al, I got to hear an update on the Everesting journey. And I don't want to hear some padded, everything's great and cushy. I want to hear how this gone, because that's a hell of a feat. And give people a little idea of what Everesting actually is. I had no idea.
All right, so I try to keep this in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
There is an event called Everesting 29029. So 290.
Everesting.
Yep.
Everesting. Everesting.
Yes, sir. Like Mount Everest, but you are Everesting, like you're doing it. And
Correct. Okay.
29029, Mount Everest is 29,029 vertical feet tall. So in 2020, there was a group of like six of us. My buddy called me and he was like, "Hey, dude, I'm going to go to this mountain in Utah, snow base in Utah. And we're going to do this event called 29029." I'm like, "What is it?" It's like, well, you hike up the mountain, you take the gondola down, and you get 36 hours to repeat that until you scale the equivalency of Mount Everest. You want to go? Absolutely not. I want nothing to do with that. I come out of the bodybuilding industry. I'm not like a runner,
Cardio guy.
cardio guy. Yeah, I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that. 2 weeks later, it was pretty cool. No, it sucked. My buddy is like freak athlete, NFL's fittest man twice, cover of Muscle and Fitness. So I should have known, like, all right, this dude doesn't need to train.
Yeah.
Lap one, I made it up. So each mountain, there's probably 6 or 7 different mountains: Snow Basin, Utah, Jackson Hole, Stratton, Vermont, Whistler, Canada, Aspen.
You did the one in Vermont, didn't you?
I did Vermont, I did Snow Basin, Utah, and I did Jackson Hole.
Okay.
And I've been chasing that since 2020. The second lap on the first one I went to in Snow Basin, Utah, like, dude, my legs locked up like the worst Charlie horse lactic acid. I can't move. Like, I'm just gonna just roll down this hill. So then I was like, okay, I got to train. And then I trained. I did 3 events the following year. I did not accomplish that. The following year after that, in 2023, did 2 events. I did not accomplish it. And by accomplish, it's not a race. So it's you versus you. This is the only community I've ever been involved from an athletic standpoint that is very much complete, not compete. Meaning nobody's competing with each other. They're all cheering you on. You don't get a trophy. You get a red hat. The coveted red hat.
Not this red hat.
Jill's like, yeah, I've done these for years. Or
Yeah,
Al's like, I got a red hat, bro. Like, I did none of this, sucker.
Yeah.
So long story short, you can't buy the red hat. You have to earn it.
You earn it.
Jackson Hole, July of last year, it was 19 laps. So you go up, take the gondola down. It's a 6-minute gondola down, and you go and they have a board, like a big, huge, probably 100-foot long board with a branding iron. And every time you make your lap, you brand this iron in, and it tells everybody at home and where you're at, where you're at.
Cool.
I finished it with 7 minutes to go by the grace of God.
Damn.
Through the night, didn't sleep. It was miserable and beautiful at the same time. A lot of conversations, very deep conversations with just me and God. Because, dude, when you're out there at 3:00 in the morning, you got nobody to yell at. Like, that's what are you doing with your life?
There's no one else.
That's it. So that was that. Takeaway from that is I wouldn't quit at anything that you do. Like I said, I'm not going to say fail, because I look at fail as like you only fail if you quit. It took me 4 years. My buddy did it the first time. So it's put yourself in a position, man, where you can just continue to seek and go after it, and don't let anybody tell you you can't. And now I got a red hat. I don't even wear hats. Just sit on myself.
You got it though.
But I got it.
You earned it. Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think the closest thing that I've done was like a 12-mile out and back, maybe like 3,000 vertical climb. And we had like our packs on or whatever. It was me and my buddy. We were young. We were like in our like mid-20s, and we drank like 6 Miller Lights the night before, woke up a little hungover, and tried doing this. And I was locked up. Charlie horse, both quads tight. We're like 300 feet from the top. So I can only imagine. What is it? 2020? What is it? 2029? What is it?
29,029 feet.
29,029 feet. Yeah, I was like, and that's the vertical, like that's the elevation gain. that you do?
So each mountain is 100%. So like Snow Basin was 13 laps.
Yeah, but you go up and down to accumulate the vertical climb that
Right.
it takes for Everest.
Depending
Yeah,
on
I
how
was.
long or how steep. Right.
I'd be one of those guys frozen on the side of Everest at like base camp.
So I have some buddies that have done this event and have actually scaled Mount Everest, and I'm not going to speak
shit.
like that. It's different, right? Because people die and they are left.
Totally.
But you get, I'm not going to say time to acclimate, but you could be week 1 here, week 2 base camp, whatever. This is 36 hours. It's mindset training. You have to understand your caloric needs and how much your expenditures are, and water and salt intake and all that. I didn't know any of that, dude. I'm just out here for a hike because my buddy said, hey, it's a cool idea.
Is it foolish to say that what you did was harder than climbing Everest? Because you're doing Everest in 36 hours.
Man, I'll say that, and then your DMs are going to blow up, or my DMs are going to blow up with people that like actually have done it, because you have elements in Everest. You have
Of course.
You're literally in a different country.
Altitude,
So,
you're carrying all that altitude.
Yeah, I mean, and you could die, so there's that. Yeah,
that's that's the fun factor, though.
Yeah, it's just that.
Yeah, it's a little extra something to motivate.
I forgot I shared with you about 29:29, man. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Dude, I thought it was awesome. I'll never forget it, because I was like, Everesting. I never heard of it. And I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But cool. Okay, well, that was a good little sign off. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hammett Homes, everybody, thank you for jumping on, and we'll leave it there.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
See you guys.